Good afternoon. My name is Preet Bharara, and I'm the United States Attorney for the Southern District of New York. We are here, once again, to announce corruption charges. This time, alleged corruption at the top of the largest union of municipal correction officers in the country. This morning, the FBI arrested Norman Seabrook, the longtime president of the Correction Officers Benevolent Association, or COBA, a union representing over 9,000 correction officers in New York City. We also charged and arrested Murray Huberfeld, the founder of Platinum Partners, a New York-based hedge fund. Seabrook and Huberfeld are charged with engaging in a straightforward and explicit bribery scheme. The complaint describes a simple quid pro quo, a $60,000 cash kickback to Seabrook with promises of even more in exchange for a $20 million investment in Huberfeld's hedge fund. By way of background, Norman Seabrook has been the president of COBA for over 20 years. As president of the union, Seabrook wielded power and control over the lives of the thousands of correction officers he represented, including by making decisions about how the officers' retirement funds should be invested. As alleged in the complaint, Seabrook believed he was entitled to more. As he put it to a witness at the start of the charged bribery scheme in 2013, quote, "It was time that Norman Seabrook got paid," close quote. The cooperating witness I just mentioned, identified in the complaint as CW1, has since pled guilty to his participation in this scheme. CW1 knew that his friend Murray Huberfeld, who ran the hedge fund Platinum Partners, was looking for investors, and an investment from a public pension like COBA would be very helpful to his business, so helpful, in fact, that Huberfeld might be willing to pay a kickback to get it. And it turns out that he was right. Huberfeld allegedly jumped at the chance. He agreed to pay Seabrook a secret kickback if Seabrook invested COBA money in Platinum Partners, as the complaint alleges. CW1 communicated this to Seabrook, and Seabrook ultimately directed a total of $20 million of COBA money to Platinum Partners. If you look at the visual to my right, we depict the alleged Seabrook bribe scheme, and we have, as I described and described in the complaint, a very simple and straightforward quid pro quo. The quid being the $60,000 going from Murray Huberfeld to Norman Seabrook. As I'll describe in a moment, it didn't go directly from this party to that party. It went through CW1, and I'll describe how that $60,000 cash payment was made in a moment. And in return for that kickback, there was a quote, and that was Norman Seabrook, using his power as president, as head of the union, directed at least 3 times investments into Huberfeld's Platinum Partners funds. Once in March 2014, $10 million from the annuity fund. Again in August 2014, $5 million from COBA's community fund. And in the middle of those two, a $5 million investment in the COBA General Fund. So for a total of $20 million. Notably, by the way, this was an unusual investment, as COBA had never before invested in high-risk vehicles like hedge funds. So not only was this the first time COBA had invested in a hedge fund, it was also the first time that Platinum had received an investment from a retirement fund. We allege this was not a coincidence, it was corruption. Notably also, COBA's investments in Platinum Partners came at a time when the fund desperately needed additional money, at a time when redemptions were rapidly outstripping new investments. In fact, COBA's $20 million investment allegedly made it the largest investor in one of the Platinum funds in 2014, amounting to more than half of the incoming dollars that year. So the bribed investment was something of a lifeline for that fund. In other words, just as high net worth investors were getting out of the fund, Seabrook was getting in with union retirement money. $5 million, as I mentioned at the chart, of the $20 million that Seabrook directed to Platinum was COBA's own operating assets, and that amounted to almost half, 40%, of COBA's non-retirement fund assets locked in with one hedge fund, Platinum. Now, how did this witness get the money to Norman Seabrook? Literally through a bag full of cash. As the complaint alleges, on December 11th of 2014, the cooperating witness went to one of Seabrook's favorite luxury goods stores, Ferragamo, and bought a bag and filled it with $60,000 in cash. He then met Seabrook a few blocks from the store, got into his car, and handed him the bag of money. $60,000 in cash kickbacks for Seabrook sending COBA money to Platinum Partners as alleged. By the way, I can report that in a court-authorized search of Seabrook's home this morning, FBI agents found a bag that matches the description from the Ferragamo receipt, along with 10 pairs of Ferragamo shoes. Now, to hide their corrupt scheme and to reimburse CW1, as alleged, the co-conspirators hatched a cover-up, a plan involving a contemporaneous fake invoice for basketball tickets. Let me explain that. So you remember that CW1 fronted the bribe money, the kickback money of $60,000 to Norman Seabrook. But that kickback was actually going from Murray Huberfeld to Norman Seabrook. So CW1, according to the scheme as alleged, had to be reimbursed by Mr. Huberfeld. So what did they do? In order to paper that reimbursement in a way that would appear to be legitimate, Huberfeld suggested that they create a fake invoice representing a fake sale of 16 Knicks tickets that the cooperating witness had as part of his season's tickets. They agreed to claim that he sold those tickets to Platinum Partners for precisely $60,000. So that's 2 seats for 8 games at $7,500 per game. The date of the invoice that we allege is fake was December 11th, 2014, the same date as the date of the purchase of the Ferragamo bag and the cash bribe. By the way, on the date that Huberfeld purportedly paid $60,000 for 16 Knicks tickets, the Knicks record was 4-20. Of course, CW1, we allege, never actually gave Huberfeld the tickets, and no one at Platinum ever used them. It was just a way to paper over the $60,000 in payments to Seabrook. We come here a lot to talk about corruption cases, and virtually always it's with these very fine partners who are standing with me. So I want to thank the FBI, represented here by Diego Rodriguez, Assistant Director in charge of the New York Field Office, for their great work in this investigation that happens again and again and again. Our partnership with the FBI is as strong as it has ever been, and that's a testament to their hard work, dedication, fearlessness, independence, and I can't say enough about them. I do want to thank some folks by name, specifically Special Agents Blair Tolman, Joe Downs, Jennifer Ranucci, Bard Hubbard, Michael Buscemi, and Jason Alberts. I also want to thank and acknowledge the NYPD and Commissioner Bratton for their assistance in this and a number of related public corruption investigations, and in this case specifically, Sergeant Mark Klausner of the Internal Affairs Bureau. And finally, I want to thank the folks in my own office, the career investigators and prosecutors who worked to get us to this point, specifically Assistant U.S. Attorneys Martin Bell, Russell Capone, Khan Nawade, supervised by Andrew Goldstein, the chief of our Public Corruption Unit. As alleged today, Norman Seabrook, COBA's president for over 2 decades, made decisions about how to invest correction officers' retirement money, the nest egg for thousands of hardworking public servants, based not on what was good for his union members, but based on what was good for Norman Seabrook. For a Ferragamo bag filled with cash, Seabrook allegedly sold himself and his duty to safeguard the retirement funds of his fellow correction officers. Now, Norman Seabrook is presumed innocent, and everything I have said is an allegation, but we intend to prove every single allegation in court as soon as we are able. We intend also to be as aggressive as ever in exposing corruption wherever we find it, and it is too bad that we seem to find it everywhere we look. Now let me bring to the podium Diego Rodriguez of the FBI.
Thank you, Preet, and good afternoon, everyone. For 21 years, Norman Seabrook has served as president of the Corrections Officers Benevolent Association, or COBA, New York City's largest corrections officers union and the largest municipal jail union in the United States. His tenure and stature with COBA has earned him enormous power, including power over the institution's financial affairs and retirement funds. Earlier today, Mr. Seabrook, along with alleged co-conspirator Murray Huberfeld, co-founder of Platinum Partners hedge fund, was arrested on charges of conspiracy and fraud. As alleged, in November 2013, Seabrook complained to a friend about working hard to invest COBA's money without any personal financial benefit, asserting that it was time that Norman Seabrook got paid. In December 2013, that friend introduced Seabrook to Huberfeld, allegedly in order to facilitate an investment by COBA in Platinum Partners, a hedge fund co-founded and allegedly managed off the books by Huberfeld. As incentive, Mr. Seabrook allegedly was promised personal financial compensation in the amount of $100,000 to $150,000 per year, depending on the amount of the COBA funds that were invested. In March 2014, COBA made an initial $10 million investment in Platinum, followed by an additional investment of another $10 million over the remainder of 2014. The charging complaint asserts that Huberfeld, using an intermediary, made an incentive payment to Seabrook of $60,000 in December of 2014. Seabrook allegedly also received non-monetary compensation such as trips to the Dominican Republic, to Israel, Las Vegas, California, as well as some other luxury items. When an official takes advantage of his or her position as steward of an organization's financial resources in order to line their own pockets, it's a dereliction of that official's duty to protect the financial contributions of the hardworking men and women who belong to the organization. When a hedge fund manager provides bribe payments to organizations to gain their businesses, he or she puts the financial security of the fund's investors at risk. This kind of criminal collusion destabilizes the system and undermines investors' confidence in the integrity of the marketplace. The FBI, along with our partners, will continue to work to protect our citizens from the destabilizing consequences of corruption and deceit. Many thanks, as always, to our partners in all our investigations, U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara and his office. I would also like to thank and congratulate the FBI's Public Corruption Investigative Team, along with our partners at the NYPD, Commissioner Bratton, and the Internal Affairs Bureau, who worked together to bring this case to its conclusion. Thank you very much.
Happy to take your questions. Yeah.
Yes, sir. You seem to be in the details in the court papers underlying the arrest, references to a social nexus between the NYPD and a specific officer not named. That detail is not in the press release that I will give you quickly. Could you just flesh out what you're going to say on the record about the nexus between an NYPD officer and this criminal conspiracy?
Yeah, I'm not prepared to say anything beyond the complaint. I think at one or two junctures in the complaint, there's a reference to a meeting or a trip in which there was participation by an NYPD officer, and that's all I'll say. Yeah. I'm not going to claim that there's any other allegation of illegal activity beyond what we allege, so I'm not answering that question. Yeah. It seems hard to understand how it could be affected. The question was, there's a case involving honest services fraud relating to the former governor of Virginia, pending before the Supreme Court, as to what actually is required to be proven with respect to a quid pro quo. We believe, no matter what happens in that Supreme Court ruling, although we haven't seen it yet and it hasn't come down yet, that we allege very specific, substantial quos in response to a quid, and so we don't think it would have any effect, but we haven't seen the opinion. Yeah. Yeah, I'm not going to identify who the cooperating witness is, because if I felt like doing that, we would have done that in the complaint. And the role of the cooperating witness, I think, is identified in some detail in the complaint. That cooperating witness, among other things, will testify to the fact that he bought the bag, that he stuffed it with cash, that he got reimbursed in a sham arrangement with respect to the Knicks tickets. So his involvement in the conspiracy that he has pled guilty to and that is alleged in the instant complaint is fairly broad. I'm not going to comment on whether he is, what the degree to which he will be helpful in other investigations. The complaint does say that he is assisting other investigations as well, and that's all I'll say.
Yeah, I'm not going to comment any further than what's alleged already in the complaint with respect to Mr. Huberfeld. As we mentioned, yes. Off the books, yes.
Just further to that, there's an allegation in the complaint that Mr. Huberfeld was more responsible than was presented publicly because of some concerns about past legal troubles. Yeah.
Did you determine how much of a return was made on the $20 million?
No, not yet. Not yet. But that's obviously something that we'll be taking a look at. Yeah. Yeah, look, so we have in this office has spent a lot of time focusing on the problem of the cycle of violence and excessive use of force at Rikers Island, both in connection with particular cases against correction officials and with respect to the institution as a whole. And other offices have done the same. I think the Bronx DA's office just won some important convictions with respect to correction officers. Those are wholly separate and independent of the case that we have brought today, the allegations that we have made against Norm Seabrook. I will say, just generally speaking, these allegations remain to be proven, but any time that someone who is a stakeholder in an institution in some important way is proven to be corrupt in a court of law, and that person is removed and held accountable, that generally speaking is a good thing for everybody in every aspect.
A number of NYPD officers have been placed on modified duty because of investigations by your office, the FBI, and the NYPD. Does that case continue, or does this change the book on that particular investigation?
I'm not going to comment on what other investigations are or not pending. As those of you who come here often appreciate, it is seldom the case that the bringing of a particular charge and a particular date is the end of the matter. We're still investigating lots of different things, and you should expect to see me again.
Is there any evidence that Mr. Seabrook stood in the way of reform and others?
We don't allege that at all here, no. Back there. Yeah, look, I'm not going to comment on what ongoing investigations say about the state of affairs with respect to public corruption in our institutions in New York. I think you need to go no further than look at the track record of this office with the FBI over the last year, 2 years, 3 years, when you have leaders in the legislature and the kind of corruption we're alleging today, all brought by an office that's looking hard at it. That tells you something about how pervasive corruption may be. And as I think I said at the end of my remarks, it's too bad that we seem to find it everywhere we look. It's a big problem. It's a serious problem. I'm running out of adjectives to describe it, but it's a big problem.
A few weeks ago, you made a speech in light of the convictions of Silver Skills, and you alleged that there was also problems in the executive branches in all the here in the city of New York. What did you mean by this?
I think those comments speak for themselves. That we're investigating corruption in every place that you can imagine one might find it, in the legislature, in unions, as we see today, in the executive branch, and I was making a broad and general point, deliberately lacking in specificity, that no institution that we are aware of in New York State, local government is immune from corruption, and we intend to show that. Thank you.